All right, and we are live. What is going on, my specialist? SPC here, and welcome back to an all new episode of Tier Ranking Tuesday. So, guys, today we are going to go into a franchise that I am absolutely in love with. That, of course, being none other than Resident Evil. And as you guys see, everything is a little messed up. They didn't have everything the way they're supposed to be. So I am putting them in kind of a specific order, but just trying to get it to where it makes the most sense here. So obviously we are going to be ranking all of the, I believe it's seven live action, the 4 animated. I'm looking the wrong way. Here we go. And the 2 Netflix Resident Evil shows. So, as you obviously see, I think I've got everything not right here. Let's do this once. Okay. I kind of had to hurry up and rush home quick because I didn't have everything the way I wanted to. There we go. Okay, so we have our 5 tiers that we are doing this with. The S tier is just Project Nemesis, and I think we can kind of all agree. I don't think any of these films are going to be in the S tier. A tier, we've got Welcome to the Family. Of course, a signature phrase from my favorite Resident Evil game of all time. That, of course, being Resident Evil 7. The B tier, You Want Stars. Obviously, of course, that's from Resident Evil 3, the classic and the remake. And I actually, if you guys are new here, I actually did get to interview the motion capture and voice actress for Jill Valentine from the 2020 Resident Evil 3 game, Nicole Tompkins. She actually said that to me before we signed off. It's pretty cool. The C tier, No Thanks, Bro. And, of course, the bottom tier, and Stay Dead. So, not going to beat around the bush. Not going to take any time. Just want to say, I do like all of these films and shows. There's just definitely some that don't entirely resonate with me. So, actually, I just realized something too. There we go. Tier Ranking Tuesday. So, all right, guys. Obviously, of course, obviously in the chat, let me know your guys' thoughts of where you guys would put all of these films and shows. But without further ado, let's finally get into the tier ranking. And, of course, kicking things off is, of course, going to be... Oh, geez, sorry. Is, of course, the original Resident Evil. And I am going to put this in Welcome to the Family. I actually think, as just an overall solid film, I think it's a really good action zombie horror film. I think it really nails everything you want in a zombie film. I mean, you get great zombies with great effects. Obviously, you get some CGI and some not very good effects as well. You get some pretty good action. This is probably, besides another one that I'm going to put on here later, probably the scariest of the original line of Resident Evil films. I do think Mila Djokovic, I think she's fine in the role in this one. I don't think she's fantastic by any means. I do like the side characters in here quite a bit. I do like Rain. I do like I can't think of what his name is at the top of my head, but like the leader of the Stars team. And I did like Matt quite a bit. Although I kind of felt like Matt was in a weird way kind of supposed to be like a Leon type character. And when they do practical effects with the zombies and the creatures, they're fantastic. But obviously, of course, the CGI in here is terrible. Not all of the acting is very good in really any way, shape, or form in some ways. And just really, this isn't Resident Evil. I mean, it just, by the name, by certain things like the T virus and the liquors and the stars and all that, it's Resident Evil. But in all reality, this is about as far away from Resident Evil as you could possibly get. Obviously, later films in the franchise definitely do that as well, where they go so far away from anything Resident Evil besides, again, just the T virus and things like that. So, Resident Evil, the original, is going to be in Welcome to the Family. Next up, we've got Resident Evil Apocalypse. And this one I'm going to put above the original Resident Evil. This one is out of the original 6 films by Paul W.S. Anderson. This is the most Resident Evil film we're going to probably ever get from him. I mean, you got characters you're adding in here. You've got Jill Valentine in here. You get Carlos. You get Nemesis. This is basically Resident Evil 3 as possibly as good as it could have gotten. I don't like Jill in this film at all. I really don't. The actress just annoys me to no end. I think Mila Djokovic, I think her acting is a tad worse than it was in the first film, but her action sequences are all really good as well. Obviously, of course, you can't talk about this film without talking about the practical effects of Nemesis as well. That's the best looking thing we're ever going to probably get out of Resident Evil films and shows. I mean, it looked pretty much like he was pulled straight from the video game, which, again, is fantastic. But again, where this falls, again, CGI is terrible. The action is so over the top that it's at times hilarious. You do get a pretty good character in Mike Epps. I don't know why I can't think of what his name is at the top of my head, but he was actually pretty good. His little comedic moment where he's with the other Stars members and Nemesis goes and just nails them all down. And he just stands there and he doesn't get shot at all. That was by far the best scene in the entire movie. But also, like I said, once again, even though it does have more Resident Evil stuff in it, it's still not Resident Evil. It's just it doesn't always work. So, and sadly, you're going to hear me say that at least 4 more times. So, might as well just get into the next part with Resident Evil Extinction. And I'm going to put this one in You Want Stars. Now, before I talk about the good, I got I want to just talk about like my problems with this film right away. Uh, my first problem is really this concept and this title should have been saved for the final film. Like, just with how deserted the planet is. Like, it's literally just a wasteland. It literally looks like some Mad Max type of stuff. I mean, extinction, obviously, everybody on the planet is dead. That's just one. Those are my two biggest problems with this film. Obviously, once again, I already said it. I'm going to say it three more times here. It's not Resident Evil. It's very far from it, even though in here we get the professor, the doctor, whatever he is. He gets to turn into basically our version of the tyrant from uh, Resident Evil 2. We get introduced to Claire Redfield, who I'm personally going to say, out of these 6 Paul W.S. Anderson films, is my favorite character. Out of the Paul W.S. Anderson films, I just what Ali Larter does, man, she is fantastic. Like, she is exactly what Jill, not Jill, Alice, that's her name. What Alice should be. I don't like that they give Alice like these psychic powers. Again, that's not Resident Evil. I don't know what it is. I know it's like Project Alice, all that stuff. I wasn't a big fan of that. But this is just a pretty good, solid action horror film, especially the scene where they actually stop in Las Vegas. All them zombies get, you know, broken out of the what the heck is it called? Like the container that's there. And that's the best sequence in the whole movie. The whole part with like the birds attacking everybody and her lighting them on fire, that was just silly and dumb and stupid, and I did not like it at all. But I do think Resident Evil Extinction is a pretty solid Resident Evil film. It's just I wish it could have been so much better. And now we are at Resident Evil Afterlife 3D, our first 3D Resident Evil film. I'm going to say this before I even put it in any spot right now. This, I don't know what it was, but my first time going through all these Resident Evil films for the first time, this was my favorite. Like, I think I gave this like a 4 stars. After going back and rewatching it a few times, it is not a 4-star movie. It is not anywhere near worthy of that. So for me, this is going to go into no thanks, bro. I will say the entire first act is my favorite part of this. It gave me season 3 of The Walking Dead vibes. Those are the vibes that I got from watching that opening part with them being in this big prison. You got Chris Redfield locked down and just everything with the zombies coming up and trying to go after Alice. Her sequence where she actually swings off of the building and everything, that was a pretty cool sequence. The sequence in the shower room would have been so much better if there wasn't any slow motion. That's my biggest problem with this. I felt like I was watching a Zack Snyder version of Resident Evil because there is so much slow motion. And not only that, but this movie just it's such a middle of the road because that whole, like I said, the first act is amazing. But then you get all just these stupid slow-mos, all these stupid attempts at 3D, like throwing a gun or Wesker throwing his glasses at Chris. And it was a lot of callbacks. Like, this film is like Resident Evil 5. So you got like the Las Plagas monsters. You got Wesker in here doing the same thing, like I said, taking his glasses off, throwing them at Chris. Him and Claire are trying to fight against Wesker. And I don't know. And of course, that big cliffhanger that we get with all of the survivors coming up to the top of the ship, and then you've got Jill and all of Umbrella coming after them with that huge sequence. And oh man, hands down the most just conflicting film. Because again, man, that if the entire film would have been like the first act, this probably would have still been my favorite. But definitely a major step below all three of these films, personally to me. Oh boy, Extinction. Resident Evil Extinction is next. And I don't know what it's been these last couple of times I've watched this, but I'm going to put this in Welcome to the Family. I have had one hell of a good time watching Resident Evil Extinction. Not Extinction. What is this one? Retribution. Sorry, not Extinction. Wow, my bad. Resident Evil Retribution. The action sequences in this are some of the best that we had gotten from Mila Jovovich. Like her whole hand-to-hand combat sequence she has with Jill at the end of the film, that was awesome. That was my favorite part of the whole film. You do get some pretty good zombie action. You do get a lot of these different, like, I don't know really what you want to call them, like hubs, where like there's one in Japan, there's one in like a suburb. And I think there's another one in like, I want to say it's like Russia or something. But you do get a lot of cool sequences of that. The super liquor in here is, oh, that was, if it looked better, I cannot talk today. I don't know what my problem is. If it looked better with some better CGI, I would probably say it's the best CGI looking monster we've ever gotten out of these films. But again, obviously, it's not Resident Evil. Very far removed from Resident Evil. Again, not a big fan of Jill. I think she is a little bit better in here as a villain. And I think she does a lot better than she does in Apocalypse. I like the fact that we do bring back like the older characters from the first film. Obviously, though, they're clones. I don't really like the whole clones thing. To me, clones should stay in something sci-fi. Even though I guess in a weird way you could consider this to be sci-fi. And I forgot to talk about the opening scene with Alice and her daughter. How it's not our Alice that we've been following these last couple of movies, but it's like just a housewife one. And that whole opening part there, it was like straight out of Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, and it was a fantastic sequence. Really, though, the biggest problem with this are like I guess what I'm just going to call them in here, the legacy characters they bring in. I don't really think that Ada is very well done. She seems just so bored, like she doesn't even want to be there. Leon is absolutely god awful. Like, god awful. He might have the look of Leon, but he does not have the charisma or anything of Leon. And I know we do get Barry in here. I'm not familiar with the character of Barry very much. I will willingly say I've only played maybe an hour of the Resident Evil 2002 remake. So, Cardinal Sin, I know I had never played the original trilogy of Resident Evil games. So, because I'll be honest, just to kind of spoil some things for you guys, I don't like the fixed camera angles at all. That's my least favorite out of all of the gameplay mechanics you have in Resident Evil. But instead of this being a good action horror film, I actually thought this was just overall a great action film. You got some good horror stuff in here. And the biggest problem, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is that ending. Such a blue balls ending, because we get all of our main characters up on top of the White House. You have Alice, Jill, Claire, Ada, Leon, Wesker. You have them all on top of the White House. You have this sea of people out there all fighting all of these bioweapons. And you think, yes, this final film we're going to get in the Resident Evil franchise is going to be the best. It's going to be action-packed. We're going to see some great things. And then we actually get to the final chapter, and this should be no surprise. This is going into Stay Dead. This film sucks. I normally don't say that about a movie. I usually at least try to find some positives. There are a couple of positives in here, but this hands down is the worst media version we have gotten of Resident Evil. I mean, you have just so many cuts, like an entire fight sequence between Alice just hanging upside down and fighting these couple of bikers. There's like at least 15 to 20 different cuts in there. I don't like this basically, and I gotta try and word this the right way. This is basically, I guess, the Alien 3 of this franchise. Because when we get into this film, everybody's killed off, but they're killed off a screen this time. So, Ada's dead. We think Claire is dead. Claire's not dead. Jill is dead. The little girl from the previous film is dead. Wesker, he betrayed everybody and got everybody killed, and Leon is dead. So we didn't get a good, crazy, cool, like Avengers Endgame type of a film. But what we do get is just a terrible CGI mess of a final chapter. All of a sudden now there's like a time limit as to when everybody in the world will be dead. So we got to get Alice there. She's going back to the nest from the very first film. We get a good fighting sequence, at least, with her and Claire against the doctor. Like I said, I can't remember what his name is at the top of my head. But you get very unforgettable characters. You get another Blue Balls ending where you think it's over, and honestly, they could have even continued and made more films. It's just this was just hands down the worst decision that these people could have made doing this version of Resident Evil. Like I said, if you would have kept Extinction as the title and you would have made it just like that, even though it pretty much is, you still have like the barren wastelands of the world. So, I mean, it's closer, but just calling it Resident Evil, the final chapter. I mean, again, how many horror films have been called the final chapter, and there are still plenty of films that come after it. Saw the final chapter. Obviously, we got like 3 more films after that. We had 2 in the Friday the 13th franchise. We got part 4 of the final chapter. And it goes all the way to Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. And we still got a couple more films after that. So this has that huge negative on it too. The fact that it has the final chapter, and legitimately, I could have, as much as I don't want to say it, I could have seen them making at least another couple more films. But yeah, the final chapter, it's the worst. I hate this film. I don't enjoy watching it. I just watch it just to get through all the Resident Evil films, because I always do binge all 6, but it's always the one I am the least forward to looking to. All right. Probably the most controversial film on this ranking. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City. There are a lot of things they get right. There are quite a few things they get wrong. But for me, they get more right than they get wrong. And I am putting this at the top of Welcome to the Family. This by far is my favorite Resident Evil movie, period. I love not everything. I shouldn't word it like that. I love a lot of what they do in this film. I love the character of Claire. I think Claire is very well done in here. Same thing too with Chris Redfield. I don't mind Jill. I just kind of think she acts more like a love, like a, how do I want to word it? Jeez. I'm sorry, guys. I rushed home to like get here, and I'm like all in like a whack here. A Jill, lovesick puppy. That's the word. I wanted to say a cat. Wow. She's like a lovesick puppy when it comes to like how she feels about Wesker in here. Let's get the obvious out of the way. Wesker and Leon are terrible. These are not the iconic roles of these characters. Like Leon, you think of a strong character, especially in Resident Evil 2. He's a rookie cop coming to Raccoon City because he got transferred here. Obviously, in here, you come to find out that his dad's a police captain and got him into the Raccoon City Police Department. And everybody's teasing him and stuff because he shot his partner in the ass. Such a stupid thing that they did there. So stupid. And Wesker, to me, he just seems like that just jockey tool type of a character, and I not a fan of it. The other big problem are the CGI. The CGI might honestly be the worst out of any of these films, even early age CGI from the first couple of Resident Evil films. And really, honestly, what the biggest problem is, which I think everybody is going to agree on, this should not have been one film. Because in here, they combine both the original Resident Evil with the Spencer Mansion and Jill and Wesker and Chris going there. And then you also have the Resident Evil 2 story with Leon, Claire, Irons, and while you don't get the Tyrant in here, technically, I guess, I don't really know. Oh yeah, you don't get the Tyrant. You get what's his name now? Wow. The doctor who injects himself. I can't remember what his name is at the top of my head now. But you get him injecting himself, of course, turning into a big creature and stuff, and you get the whole ending part with him turning into a bigger monster and going through the train and everything like that. But individually, story-wise, I love what they do. I love everything they do with Resident Evil 2. I played the game when it was brand new and came out. It's one of my favorite Resident Evil games. So when you actually get all of the references in there, like the orphanage, the keys, G6, I believe is his name. Uh, Obviously, again, Leon getting his official RPD outfit he gets. I mean, that was all great. The same thing, too, with what they do with the Spencer Mansion. It looks good. The inside looks great. You get some great zombie action in there. But these two films should have never become one. They should have made the original Resident Evil as one movie, go into Resident Evil 2, then you could go into 3. Even though I've been championing for a while that they should just do Resident Evil in TV form, obviously we still got to get to the 2 shows, but do the first season, Resident Evil with the Spencer Mansion, then do 2 with Leon and Claire, 3 with Jill and Carlos, and obviously do 4 if you want to continue 5 and 6 and 7 and Village and all that stuff. But that's where I think Resident Evil should go. It should go to television, whether it's probably not Netflix, because obviously we have to talk about the 2 shows, and obviously they didn't do very well. But give it to somebody like, give it to HBO Max, especially with what they did recently here with The Last of Us. I mean, The Last of Us was an amazing show. I'm somebody who was only played maybe half of the game, and I fell in love with the show. It makes me want to go back and get through the rest of The Last of Us. But to me, Welcome to Raccoon City does better with being a Resident Evil movie than any of the 6 Paul W.S. Anderson films. It does have quite a bit of problems, but less for me. I absolutely love this film, and that's why it is going to be at the top of my ranking. All right, now at least the next 5 are all animated. So we have the 4 animated Resident Evil films, and then we have the 2 Netflix shows. So up next is Resident Evil Degeneration. I am going to put this at you want stars. I'll be honest, my overall biggest problem with me is the animation. I don't like the animation at all in this film. I think it's terrible. I like Leon and Claire. I like them as characters. I like the concept of this taking place in an airport. I think that was a pretty cool like change of scenery and stuff. It's the Resident Evil film I am the least familiar with. I just remember it was like okay at best. So unfortunately, that's really all I have to give you on this one. So just Degeneration just wasn't entirely for me. But now we have Resident Evil Damnation. And I am going to put this in between Extinction and Degeneration. This is basically like Resident Evil 4, but like more civilian, I guess we can say. Like it takes place in another country. Once again, you know, where you're dealing with the Los Illuminados, where you're dealing with them again. I'm pretty sure if I remember right, the Las Plagas is still like the threat in this film. You get, I think it's Matthew Mercer is his name. Please correct me if I'm wrong. He comes in to play Leon in here. So obviously it's a nice tie-in from Resident Evil 4 to Damnation. So it feels like the same character. And you get a lot of good action. Obviously you get some liquor action in here, which is really good. But my problem with this, even though I know it's an animated show, even though I know it's Resident Evil, there's just so much logic stuff that just annoyed me. Like, Leon is fighting a tyrant. He gets hit in the stomach as hard as the tyrant can hit him. And then he goes and hits like a pillar over on a building. And he just gets back up like nothing even happened to him. Stuff like that just kind of annoys me. So I didn't really like that very much. And there are some points in this where the animation doesn't really look very well either, but it's a fine Resident Evil film. If you want to just sit down, if you're a big fan of 4, you're probably going to like Damnation the most out of these Resident Evil shows, but just again, some logic problems for me personally. Then we have Resident Evil Vendetta. And I'm going to put this in no thanks, bro. But I am going to put it above Afterlife. It's a little bit more fun than Afterlife because you actually get more of the characters. We get Leon, we get Rebecca, we get Chris. And there's an awesome sequence with Chris and Leon where they're in this hallway and there's zombies coming both ways. And they're just sitting there shooting, going back and forth, handing each other ammo and stuff. That was a pretty cool sequence. I actually like what they do with Rebecca. She seems more like an actual hero. Like, again, I don't know much about Rebecca Chambers. I know of her. I know she's one of the lead characters in Resident Evil 0. But I've never seen her in any of the other Resident Evil shows or even mentioned. And honestly, the villain in here, he just kind of remind me basically of a Wesker. It's like they remade Wesker in a weird way. But you do feel more for the guy because his family or his wife gets killed along with her family, gets bombed while they're in the middle of their wedding. So you do kind of feel for the guy. You kind of understand why he's going through and doing all this. But again, it's more enjoyable because of characters and a little bit more story. But I don't know. It just doesn't entirely work for me. And now we are at the literally the newest addition to the Resident Evil media franchise, that being Death Island. This came out last year. And I'll be honest, I really like this. So I am going to put this right below the original Resident Evil. I think one reason I like this a lot is because this has a lot of the people from the newer Resident Evil games. So you have Stephanie Panisello in here as Claire. You've got Nicole Tompkins in here as Jill. So it kind of flows into from Resident Evil 3 into here. She feels pretty good. Obviously, of course, we all know Resident Evil 5 remake is happening. If you guys played through Resident Evil 4 and you get to the ending, if you didn't, sorry, I just spoiled it for you, but I'm pretty sure we're getting Resident Evil 5 here at some point. But really, the way I look at this is basically the Avengers version of Resident Evil. Like Jill, Chris, Claire, Leon, Ada. I'm pretty sure Ada's in here. Maybe she's not. Maybe not. Oh, Rebecca. Sorry. So yeah, you get all 5 of those characters. They all team up. They all fight all these zombies with an outbreak happening out on. I was about to say Arkham. Wow, Arkham. It's not Arkham. Jeez. What is it called? It'll come back to me eventually here, but yeah, there's an outbreak out there on the island in this prison, so you spend the entire movie in here. You get a nice, good sequence with Chris and Jill together while they're facing some lickers. Again, though, I don't like the villain. The villains, they just continuously keep seeming like they're just ripoffs of Albert Wesker. So, best animation. I have no problems with the animation at all in here, but yeah. Resident Evil Death Island, easily the best animated show that we have gotten. Alcatraz, that's what it's called. Alcatraz Island they're on. I told you I'd remember. All right, now we are here at the 2 Netflix shows, and I'll be honest, I have some thoughts about one of them at least, but we'll get to that. We are kicking things off with Infinite Darkness. And yeah, this is gonna go into no thanks, bro. I wasn't a big fan. There are so many times I tried to sit down and watch this because I thought it'd just be a quick watch. Again, I watched this because the actors from the games were back in here. So you had Stephanie Panisello in here once again as Claire. You have Nick Apostolates. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Apostolatos. I don't know how you say his name. It's a weird name. But you have him in here as Leon. So again, much like with Death Island, a nice good flow into this from the Resident Evil 2 game. But really, that's about all I have really for positives. Like, there's some decent horror in here, but it's just much more of an action show. It's just basically wash, rinse, repeat of everything we've seen before. Mad scientists, zombies, lickers, all that fun stuff. So it's again, much like the other 2, they're in the middle of the road for me. And finally, we are here at the just simply called Resident Evil from Netflix. I knew I knew going into this that it was not going to be great. I knew it wasn't going to be Resident Evil at all. But I was at least expecting a good zombie show. And I can say, for the most part, I got a pretty decent zombie show. But this is going to have to go to the top of no thanks, bro. There were a lot of problems with this show. Most of my positives are the flashbacks. I thought that was the best and most interesting part of the show. You get, I can't remember what his name is. He just passed away here last year. But you have, let me look him up. If I don't, it's going to bother me. Lance Reddick. That's who it is. You have Lance Reddick in here playing Wesker. It's a different version of Wesker, so I'm fine with it. And I'll be honest, I'm just going to say this flat out. I don't care what the color of anybody's skin is, as long as they can play the character and do a good job playing the character. I'm all in, and I do think that Lance Reddick does a good job playing Albert Wesker, especially this version. Because later on in the series, you actually get to see him in the actual Albert Wesker get up. You got the sunglasses. He even has the haircut. That was a pretty cool moment. I'm not the biggest fan of Jade, whether that be present day Jade or the 2022 Jade. I just don't like her. She's not interesting. She's not energetic. She's not really anything for me. She doesn't work for me as a character. I liked Billy quite a bit. I thought Billy was a pretty good character. I find it just kind of dumb later on how she becomes a villain. And just once again, this is not Resident Evil. You have like new Umbrella, you have new Raccoon City. You don't have stars. You have Albert Wesker. You have the creatures. You have the zombies, but that's about it. You don't. This is not Resident Evil. Like this is just to me, like I said, this is just a solid enough zombie show. I can sit down, enjoy it, and watch it for a little bit of entertainment. But and the fact too, now that they left this first season on a cliffhanger, and literally like a week or two after the show comes out, they completely canceled the show. Not that I want a show to get canceled, but I'm not surprised this got canceled because it's just if you're gonna put the name Resident Evil on something, you need to deliver Resident Evil. I will say that's at least something the animated movies do, even if I do have my problems with them. They deliver Resident Evil stuff to me. And again, even though I know it's unpopular, but Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City delivers the most Resident Evil for me that I enjoy it enough. But yeah, the Resident Evil Netflix show, it doesn't do anything for me. If I want to watch just a solid enough zombie show, not that I'm gonna pick this, I would pick a show like Netflix's Kingdom before I pick this at all. If you guys haven't seen Kingdom on Netflix, go and watch it. It's a Korean zombie show. Fantastic. Fantastic. But yeah, you guys, that is it. That is my official ranking of the Resident Evil media franchise, movies and shows, however you want to word it. Obviously, first, Welcome to Raccoon City, Apocalypse, the original Resident Evil, Death Island, Retribution, Extinction, Damnation, Degeneration, the Netflix show, Netflix live action show, I guess I should say. Vendetta, Afterlife, Infinite Darkness, and Last Chapter is at the bottom. But guys, that is going to do it for this tier ranking Tuesday. I know this was a little bit shorter. I know I was slurring my words. I'll be honest. After being off for 2 months for neck surgery, going back, I'm a little out of it because I was trying to like get back into the groove of working again. So hope you guys can forgive me for slurring and seeming kind of odd and not all here today. So I apologize for that if it wasn't as entertaining, but hopefully you guys at least liked my thoughts, my opinions, and my ranking of the Resident Evil franchise. Obviously, head down to the comment section below. Let me know your guys' ranking of the Resident Evil movie and TV shows. Obviously, too, if you disagree with me, let's do it respectfully. Everybody's got their own opinions, and whether or not you disagree with me, I respect your opinion. Let's just have a good, fun conversation down in the comments below about this. So, with that being said, you guys, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one.